The FOMO's back. It's back in so many different ways. We can all feel it. We're all we northern states are heading into winter, but it feels like spring in crypto and NFT land and decentralized space land, if you will.
Welcome to Decentralized Dawn, where lifelong friends Chicago and Disco navigate the ever-evolving crypto landscape. With genuine curiosity and a commitment to nuance as our North Star, we offer clear-eyed exploration. Our goal? To empower listeners with the tools and insights needed to flourish in this decentralized age.
Hello, everybody. Another week, another show. I am Chicago, and on my left is Disco.
Hello, everybody. I gotta say, I'm kind of feeling I'm getting into the beats of the song. It's like kind of getting my head's moving, so I like it.
Yeah, I agree. I this song, right when I heard it, it grows on me. I'm a low beats per minute guy, and this has to be 60 or less, so I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, it takes its time, which is good.
Yep. So we've got a lot of fun stuff on this show. We're going to dig deep. There's a lot of good stories right now, and everyone can feel it, but the FOMO's back.
It's so crazy because we did a show last week and we were talking about some topics, and then by the time by the time we ended the show, news changed, and it's just so it's just exciting the amount of things to look at and to examine and just kind of noodle on and think about. So it's a fertile ground to be a part of, and I'm just really excited. And you're right, the tone feels a little bit different, and I haven't felt this sort of tone in a long time, if ever. So it's fun for us to connect on this.
Yep, for sure. So the first thing we do, it's all about feeling good at the beginning and the end of the show, so we can take you in on positive vibes and take you out with positive vibes, and hopefully in the middle there's plenty of those too as we navigate this interesting space. But to kick it off, I'm starting this week with kind of the positive vibe share. I am not an Instagram guy at all. I do not have a login for it, but my wife sent me this. So we are now a family who hugs. I want you to hear this. This guy's awesome.
Did you know we need 8 hugs a day for maintenance? We need 4 hugs a day for survival. We need 12 hugs a day for growth. Hugs are important for a lot of reasons. They strengthen your immune system. They increase your feelings of safety and belonging. They boost the hormone oxytocin, which heals feelings of loneliness, isolation, and anger. So please hug your kids, hug your spouse, hug your parents. You can even hug your pets.
Absolutely. So my wife sent that to me, and we have instilled this with the kids and the family, even with our very much stronger than me, muscly teenage boy. And I got to say, it's been nice. And even he'll mock us sometimes, but even he's been receptive. So, a couple extra hugs a day it makes you feel good. It makes you feel connected to your loved ones around you. So you heard them. Like, if you can get to 8, great. But if you can get to 12, excellent. Hug. And pets count too. And I think that's why we keep those fuzzy critters around.
Yeah, they're always in a good mood and they're always got your back. So, whatever's going on, I know that I can have a little time with my bulldog Bowie and give him a hug, and you're always going to feel better. But I think it's important just to people forget basic human contact, and basically doing that kind of gives you almost a sense of place within either a family structure or a friend group or whatever. And you just kind of a lot of this stuff as we're in this digital era is not touchy feely or that sort of experience. So I think that's a great point. And I might have to get a little hug count going on our fridge or something over at my place.
Yeah. It's just one of those things that we go through life, and sometimes we get so busy and we get in our little patterns and our little mouse mazes, and we forget, like, dude, breathe, slow down, and connect with your loved ones around you.
Yeah, I agree. And it's easy to get into your content and kind of, get kind of walled off into things that are, you're interested in, as opposed to the people around you. So just taking a little time to make that human connection and let people know that they're loved and that there's love in the world is a positive thing. So I appreciate that. That's a great way to kick off the show for sure.
Cool. So let's transition over to headlines. There's a lot of interesting stories going on now. In the first one, I think there's a lot of threads going on with the marketplaces. You got OpenSea, who
Yeah.
basically is coming out with OpenSea 2.0, which, and they're firing 50% of their staff. So obviously a big number. We all know that with royalties going away, that affects OpenSea too, because once Blur did the Blur farming, OpenSea, they tried to hold out for the creators, the content creators and the artists out there, but at some point their revenues must have dropped 95% plus with the bear market and with the loss of the royalties. So they're coming out with a 2.0. I suspect it's way easier to manage with way less people since they're firing 50% of the people, but it's no surprise. But those of us who have been around a couple of years, OpenSea got there first. They printed money through the 21-22 kind of NFT renaissance bull run. And now, I mean, fast forward, 18 months later, it could not be a different story.
Yeah, it's crazy. You never want to hear about, 50% staff reduction, because you have to look at that being people, that put a lot into an organization and, they now they got to find another gig, right? But by the same token, how much was OpenSea responsive or iterating or doing much different, as things went on? So that's kind of this Darwinian element of the space overall. If you're not on top of it, someone's going to come up and eat your lunch with a new take or approach. I'm curious, you being someone who, has been more into the NFT space, what's kind of your take on this move away from, creator royalties? And I think that, I want to say, we'll probably talk about it, but I think the Yuga is trying to do something to lock in more of that side of it. So I'm just curious what your take is on that overall.
Yeah, so Yuga and Magic Eden just formed a partnership. So Magic Eden started in the Solana chain, and they were the front runner there. And the Magic Eden storefront is very good. It's very clean. It's easy to navigate. Now, I don't think I've ever used it with Solana, but that's where Bitcoin Ordinals, where most of the transactions happen as well. So these partnerships are interesting. There's a lot of pieces here. Like you said, OpenSea, they could have innovative. Obviously, I think they wanted to be more, honestly, Web 2 from a company standpoint, and they were going to go public one day. I don't know how you would go public now. I wonder if this 50% layoff, because they said that they were going to accelerate the equity timelines of those people getting laid off, just to say like, hey, we appreciate your hard work. Like if we all cash in, you get to cash in with us too, which obviously is a good thing. But I just don't see how they could go public that aren't pennies on the dollar. Maybe it's still wildly profitable with not a lot of employees, but it's just such a fall from grace from where they were. A lot of people wanted them to release a token like everybody else. And I think they were way too into the company side of it, trying to go the traditional like IPO route, that they weren't going to do that. But now they feel stuck to me. Like, and I go to OpenSea to see what's in people's wallets, because it's pretty easy to navigate and use that. I look at collections sometimes. I don't use OpenSea to buy as much anymore. I guess I Blur with all the farming and having them bring us all over there. I do use Blur more. What about you?
I haven't really done that. I mean, to be honest, I've been in a holding pattern for quite a while.
Like and everybody.
OpenSea when I got in was the main game in town, and I use it more as a catalog type situation. Like I can browse pretty easily, and I can usually, get what I'm looking for in terms of, trying to get my shopping list together and everything like that. But I don't see anything that's extremely, compelling about it from a user experience side of things right now. So as I say, like it's Darwinian to a degree, and Magic Eden, when I've gone to it and have moved around, it's pretty easy to navigate. You can do different so it does have some capabilities that are of interest to me. So.
Yeah, exactly. So that will be interesting. But so Yuga partnering with Magic Eden, that one's interesting because again, I want creators to get their royalties, and especially artists. PFP creators, I probably have a little less empathy for. Maybe I shouldn't, but artists, I do have a lot of empathy for. But I guess the realist in me also says, like, royalties are erased to zero, and it's hard to reverse that. And Yuga has released so many different PFP collections from, let's try and name some of them. Heavy Metal, obviously Bored Apes, Mutant Apes.
Yeah, it's all derivative.
The Dogs, the Bored Ape Kennel Club, the Codas, there's
music stuff they tied to.
Oh, they have music stuff too?
I think they had like some heavy metal stuff that was tied to music and, all this stuff. But yeah, so my question on this is when you're talking about royalties for the artist, do the collections themselves get the royalties? Because remember when we were doing the Azuki episode and we were looking at the, revenues, and it was coming from that. So like, are the founders getting that revenue stream, or is it specifically just the artists, or is it all kind of lumped together?
Are you talking about for a PFP collection like Yuga stuff, or for artists? Because the royalties are scraped every time a purchase is made. Let's say the royalties were 5%. 5% of that total gets scraped off and goes to, whatever the smart contract for that collection is, to that person. So in the case we're speaking of, that would be Yuga. So remember the Azuki charts we were looking at, like once the royalties went away, that annuity, that monthly, just massive amount of money with all the trading, that virtually didn't go away, but it went down, 10 to 70x lower. So without the royalties, these PFP collections, they throw big parties, they release more drops, and a lot of those airdrops were like the beans for Azuki were free. So without royalties, the other side of it is they can't do as much of that stuff, and that's why we had the elementals drop that was a fail, because they tripled the collection size from, call it 10,000 OG Azukis to 30,000 with the elementals, and they win and not incentive aligned with the holder. The holders literally lost and held all those bags and paid that $30+ million to Azuki.
Right. So if you're looking at it from a business perspective and you're a collection that's trying to become a brand that goes to a different level, they were basically caught, flat-footed when there was a transition to Blur, because they were using, any business would use projections based on past performance and revenue streams. And basically that just got eliminated with this transition. So you're sitting there seeing, a Yuga, Azuki, or this or that, being like, hey, we had all this money coming in and we were able to deploy it to be able to further the brand and work on new strategies. Now they're losing that. So is this not just kind of Yuga's way to try to hold on to that, opportunity by partnering with Magic Eden to do something to like keep that going, because that's what we need? Or where's there going to be a new infusion of funds for any of these projects or ecosystems, because they can't go back to the well of what they did before?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like if I was in the Yuga war room, I'd be like, how many more things can we release to our followers? Like how many, let's say Bored Apes, there's 5,000 holders, because a lot of people hold 2 to 10 or
Right.
whatever. But so you got 5,000 holders. Mutants, obviously, you probably have another 5 or whatever. So you've got like 10,000 different people in your main 2 collections. A lot of them hold the other stuff. But at some point, how much more stuff can you keep releasing? So when Yuga says like all new collections, will be more exclusive, and they'll be keeping OpenSea and Blur out of that, to me, you're building moats and you're building walls from more potential customers. Cause I think Yuga has just crushed it in this space. I'm not a big Bored Ape guy, but obviously a lot of people out there are, and there's a high value for those. But how many more things can Yuga release, where they do get these royalties? And maybe they'll surprise me. They've surprised me for the last couple of years and how much they've released now and the value that they've held even through a bear. I mean, obviously everything went way down in a bear, but they're still, a lot of these things are still a couple of ETH, and the Bored Apes I think are up towards 30 ETH now, and the mutants are back to 5 or whatever. So it's not great, but it's pretty good. But my big question is, the Bored Apes and the Mutant Apes, those are the OG collections. That's if Yuga stands the test of time, that's where people, I would think, would go back to and hold the most value. So are you going to do what Goblins did and literally do a new smart contract and the pointer goes? Like, to me, that's like, that's a big shakeup, and I'm not saying they are. I don't know what they're going to do, but you can't just magically, with the same smart contract you have, say OpenSea, you can't use this anymore. I think you would have to change that whole contract to go to Magic Eden. So,
well, they'll have to do something along those lines. And then the other thing is they're going to have to accelerate getting revenue opportunities outside of just Web3, so to speak, right? So they're going to have to look at this. And I know that they did a collaboration, which I was kind of interested in, frankly. And they debuted it at Ape Fest, I think in Hong Kong last week. And it was Bored Ape and Bathing Ape, which is, Bape it was started in like Harajuku in 93. And it's been like totally cool. My son's been on it forever.
Is Harajuku in Japan?
Yeah, Harajuku's a section of Tokyo. It's kind of like the trendy fashion, crazy stuff. I was looking at some of the gear and it was pretty freaking cool. Like they had a pretty cool streetwear, and they just dropped it and they released it to holders at the event in Hong Kong. I did hear there were lines and things like that, which we could get into at some point about trying to, pick up the merch. But I believe by the end of December, they're going to open it up just to be able to buy for the public and everything like that. So maybe they just have to find other strategies to create revenue to be able to continue to build what they want to build, since they're not going to be able to rely on this, the royalty income. So
how close is Bathing Ape to Bored Ape? Like in look and design and feel?
It seems extremely of the same ilk, if I could say that. Like if there was inspiration, there's Baby Milo is kind of the old school ape, representation for Bathing Ape, and like even the merger or the collab is called a Bathing Ape, so like a Bored Ape. So yeah, that logo on the top, that's the Bathing Ape logo.
Okay. So it's for the audience who can't see, it's the Bored Ape is very cartoony, but the Bathing Ape is a little more a silhouette, if you will. But obviously, it is of an ape. It's black and white, and it looks like they've got watches, pretty cool shoes. So it looks like kind of a high-end lifestyle brand. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's extremely accurate. And it came out of kind of the Tokyo and the Asian, street scene, which has always really, been kind of on the front edge of that. So I've been watching, that forever. And seeing them tie with that, it's just like with the names and kind of the similarities. It's like, is there more to this connection that I don't really understand? Because how are they now doing a collab right now? So it's something to keep an eye on and watch. But I will say the products are pretty cool. So, maybe they have a line on trying to, accelerate, more of the gear and make that more open to the public.
Yeah, this stuff is pretty cool. And now I know that full zipper hoodie where it's like the shark head. I'm like,
Yes.
oh, because I've seen that everywhere. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's bathing ape. Yeah, the interesting thing is I would think, because Azuki's obviously done a ton with high-end brands and they're exploring there. I personally think Azuki's got a way better shot because I think the Azuki art is better. I think where Bored Apes could run into a problem is the art. A lot of people love it, but it's very cartoony. And I think it's almost like, for those of us who grew up and went through that kind of the early 90s was kind of a neon phase. And it lasted like a year, maybe a year and a half. It didn't last long. And, I'm not saying putting Bored Apes in that same category, but it's like when you have that cartoony look, I don't know if you can last as long stylistically in the public's eye, but maybe they evolve with it, and maybe Bathing Ape is there to help them be more subtle with branding moving forward. So it can be more of a clothing line. It's an interesting pairing, but I have mixed feelings about it, I guess.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily like the Life's a Beach long shorts that were out there in those neon days. I know
Life's a beach and then you die.
Yeah, I know I had a really large or really bright pair of green neon trousers that I wore for about 8 months and then quickly had to move on from that phase. So yeah, we'll see. I agree. Like, and I don't want to, downsize on anything, but aesthetically and everything like that, like from a branding and art perspective, like the ape isn't, the most fire thing I've ever seen. It's like, okay, here's a kind of wacky ape and, it's part of that crew. So
absolutely. And Yuga just to throw on top of this, Yuga just had a party in Hong Kong. So did Azuki. Yeah. And this is kind of becoming the trend, especially in the big cities. Like, they've both been to New York. They were both in Hong Kong at the same time. And are a parties a big part of how you grow this in real life, having people make real life connections? And part of the answer, I think, is definitely yes, but there was a bit of a fallout there because I guess with these UV lights that they used on stage, they're figuring out that the people closest to the stage, their eyes, they woke up and their eyes hurt and they literally felt like they were burning in the middle of the night. And, so that's scary.
Yeah, something doesn't square with me or add up to me on that. Like there's something going on just because, I've been to well over 1,000 or, multiple thousands of concerts in my life and events. And
that's a lot of concerts.
I know. Well, trust me, I have, but I've had, obviously I've had ear issues potential, like I know when my ears are ringing from being too close to a speaker or something like that, but I've never had like any residual eye concerns, so that is scary. That's what's so weird. Like what was, like I've seen, a lot of pretty, intensive, shows where they're doing a lot of visuals, and I've never been overwhelmed in the eyes, and certainly never had an eye hangover where I felt like I was going blind. So I don't know what was in that.
That's terrifying. Well, I think the UV lights are actually for like cleanliness or like to clean the air. Maybe it's a COVID thing. I thought at first, I was like, oh, it's like black lights for cool visuals and stuff, but no, it's like, I guess it's this ultraviolet C light that is more for like purifying the air. So, the tough thing for Bored Apes is not like they brought all their own equipment over there. They hired a company. The place had their own stuff. Obviously, the place would have figured out pretty quick if they had those lights. So the promotion company obviously must have brought these in or something for this show. But what train wreck that is, like just coming out of the bear. Yeah, I mean, I feel I empathize with everybody involved here. Like everyone who, if your eyes are hurting, like I am so sorry. Like that's the last thing you expect going, to this kind of high-end exclusive party where you have to hold this very expensive token and NFT to come out with fears of like temporary or permanent
long-term effects.
Yeah, to your eyes. So scary stuff. So yeah, with Yuga and Magic Eden, I guess the only final thought I have on this whole piece is, when you partner with one group like that, I feel like you're kind of delaying the inevitable a little because, you know, there's going to be new NFT projects. There's going to be new in the next bull run. There's going to be new companies that come in. I don't think it's going to be dominated by Bored Apes like it was. And you actually asked me a question a couple shows ago, like, do you buy the old traditional stuff that kind of set the standard, or do you like see kind of the new stuff that was coming out? And it's funny, I said, like, you save your money and you buy the stuff that's going to stand the test of time, you know, the on-chain and the art that define this category. And we'll get to this a little later in the show, but, you know, I'm going to eat those words because there is so much cool stuff coming out as we prepare what we think for this next bull run.
Yeah, it makes me, you know, look at it and, you know, if what got these brands, and I keep using the term brands instead of collection or whatever it is, but kind of these heritage first generation lifestyle NFT brands, what got them to the point to being able to diversify and to invest into different projects and build things out was primarily the royalties. And that's not really a thing of the past, or it could be a thing of the past. It seems like it's like a, you know, grasping at on the ship going down and being like, hey, let's partner up and bring these back. And we'll do it in the name of, you know, making sure we take care of artists and creators. But at the end of the day, people care about, you know, what they're paying for, you know, how much it costs, how easy it is to get. And they don't really have a ton of loyalty to the founders or any, as you can see, people will move to what's going on. And with everything that's happened with just seeing how the ordinals kind of came out of nowhere and was, to me, somewhat unexpected for, you know, that to have what it has. And then when we did the show on it and I understood, like, you know, you're going from, you know, checkers to chess on some of the things that are there, you know, that come from that. And then seeing kind of a move overall of people being like valuing different things now. Like there seems to be a sentiment more towards pure on chain as being more value and all that. It's like, how do these incumbents, are they necessarily like, do they deserve necessarily to be the, you know, be on top again? So we'll see how it goes.
I mean, the whole model. And remember, when you get into a trade, you're not the one paying the royalties. So if I buy a Bored Ape right now, the royalty payer is the one who owned it, because obviously that's the one where the money goes. I'm not paying the royalty. And when you get out of a trade, let's say I sell my Bored Ape and I don't really want to have Bored Apes anymore. Like you said, my loyalty probably isn't going to be to those founders because it's already a super expensive piece anyway. I mean, there was even talks of like rewarding people who did pay royalties or even excluding the people who don't from certain things. You know, you could look at the blockchain and see the transaction, be like, did they pay royalties? Well, you know what? You're not welcome to the party until that ape changes hands and a royalty is paid. But you could see how that could get gamed. Like, it's, to me, I want artists, especially artists who are out there to support themselves and to get royalties, but I think it's going to go to zero. And I think this is what you said. It's a last grasp, trying a bunch of different things. They realize they can't drop stuff forever. If they want to keep this Bored Ape party vibe going, you've got to have royalties. But I think the next generation of PFP clubby collections like that are going to have to look elsewhere and break through to other mediums, like you said, with real life, you know, real physical products, and, you know, cross over to just Web 2, and as more normies get in, cross over to them and create different models and revenue streams.
Yeah. So it's just, as I said, you know, when we started the show, and I seem to go back to it almost every time, it's so fascinating just to, you know, kind of be able to watch how these things evolve. And, you know, we'll see what ends up, you know, standing and leading the way if we're looking at a different transition to another run. And I don't know if the folks that, you know, kicked in and paid a lot of money to get these, you know, to get involved in these clubs have gotten like the ROI from a membership perspective that is justified. So,
well, the early ones for sure did, and
right,
in spades, and the later people to the game have not. Now these newer entrants, if a Bored Ape's at 29 and we have a huge bull run again, they might go to 70 or 80 or 100. I mean, they peaked at like 150 floor, which is just crazy. But I don't know. I'm looking for new entrants at this point. I love my CryptoPunk, but I think there's new cool stuff out there that can attract the next generation of people coming in, because people coming in now have to convert cash into, Ethereum or whatever chain that you go to. And they're probably not going to go straight to a CryptoPunk or a Bored Ape. They're going to onboard with, I guess they could come into the Kennel Club or a Mutant Ape, but realistically, like I did, you're going to come in with something that's way cheaper, and then you're going to make friends in that group and, kind of branch out from there.
Yep. And you get, and the friendships and that loops you into paying attention to new projects that are doing things that have an ethos that's interesting and kind of attractive and pulls you in. So that's pretty cool.
Thus the FOMO. So what else we got going on? So Coinbase released their earnings.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah, I'll just give you a quick read. So Coinbase did their third quarter earnings last week, I believe it was, and they beat expectations from a revenue perspective. But that being said, you have to look at it, from a bigger picture, which is it's been their 7th consecutive quarterly loss. And if you kind of do the napkin math to go back to when that is, that goes back to like right when everything was the peak, in the 2021 bull market. So they were making just tons of money at that point off of trading revenue. But what was kind of interesting when you kind of look into the numbers a little bit more, like the trading volume's down, significantly, like 50% from last year, but the subscription and service revenue increased close to 60%. And that went up to like 334 million. And the largest driver of that is interest income from USDC. So they are really, I guess the net of what I came from this whole thing of kind of looking at their earnings and looking at where they're going is they are building, people say building the bear or whatever, but Coinbase is diversifying and they are getting their hands into so many different things. You look at the launch of Base, right? So now they basically have their own, chain that they can push people towards. They have Coinbase Ventures, which is where they invest in different projects. And I believe they have close to $500 million, sunk into these different projects that could, keep going. And they could be, somewhat positioned as potentially like, kingmakers on that. So I kind of am just noodling on this whole notion of like, so Coinbase seems to be becoming the de facto safe bet for exchanges and almost tied to the success of crypto in the United States and in the world. And
that's a strong statement, because remember, 90% of their income right now is US based. Like, I think being US centric, a lot of us miss out, Binance, for all its ills and problems, like they're huge in the rest of the world, and Coinbase is more here. Yeah, they're totally diversifying, but they've, got to see the bull before they realize a lot of these gains. So I don't know if I would say there's a lot of global potential they have, but they have not realized even a fraction of that.
No, but if they end up being the last US exchange standings or the biggest, and they have, these connections in terms of helping to understand what the regulation is going to be, they're going to know the rules of the road, and they're building accordingly so that they can have, upside from all these different potential ways that it goes. And Binance, I have the feel that they're kind of getting, I don't want to say attacked, but they're getting pretty looked at pretty closely. And it seems like
by who? By the U.S.
Yes.
government, by the SEC, which is ironic that we're looking overseas so much at, it's interesting because we're hearing here in the U.S. that Binance has all these, like we are definitely taught here to envision it as shady and there's a lot of stuff going on. Whether that's as true as we hear, I don't know, because, we don't really we don't have access to the main Binance system. The US based Binance is like a shell of what the global one is. I don't even know if it's still there anymore, but very few people use Binance here because it just doesn't have the services that the rest of the world does. But I agree with you. Coinbase is, remember, everyone else died. They're like the only one who's left. It's them, Kraken, and Gemini. And I do love Kraken. Coinbase has always had a better user interface. I always loved GDAX, which I think they call now just advanced trading, and it's kind of buried in there because if you're ever buying anything off Coinbase, always click advanced. Yeah, because it's way cheaper, because that was the old trading system that they bought called GDAX off another company. But yeah, they've got a lot of potential and with a bull, but I got so burned by them because I bought on day one when they went public, like, I was already in crypto. I'm like, yeah, I'll put some of my stonk money in Coinbase, and they literally dumped so much of it on the people who bought those first days, and it went down precipitously from there. And I'm like, a third of the value, if it was at 270, what's it at 80 or 90 or whatever. So I never sold it, but I also, I'm like, come on guys. And they're like, well, it was a bear market for everybody, but it's like, wasn't that that was a while ago. That wasn't this last bear market. That was like the one before, wasn't it? So it's like, you never fully recovered in the last couple of years, but I'm holding it. And there is a strong argument, not financial advice, to probably get more because there's so few companies left. We spoke about Gemini, like they've got a world of problems right now. They're being investigated for the whole Earn platform, which I know you're got burned by that. So yeah, they're one of the last guys left.
I guess what I'm saying is, you have an organization that's for profit and everything like that. And then you have the impending potential oncoming of the ETF markets, from either just Bitcoin to ETH, if you look at it that way, they're going to stand to benefit. If you want to see who's going to pop when something happens, like watch that stock and watch how much, how many different family offices or even bigger institutions, they're going to buy through and probably, custodian through Coinbase. So I'm just saying, it's almost like they're becoming very centralized. And I understand it's a centralized exchange and that's kind of in the name of it. But when we look at things from the lens of our show and like the, wanting there to be more decentralization, is Coinbase growing and positioning itself to have that sort of value, or to become just like the next iteration of JP Morgan Chase?
Yeah,
and, and how different are things going to be? Like, that's where I keep going back to. It's like, wow, and then when they're advocating for lobbying and stuff like that, at some point, you're going to want to make sure that you can kind of play both sides to the degree that you can get some regulation, because that'll lead to you having more opportunity to generate revenue. Yeah,
it creates a moat from newcomers. And SBF was the one purportedly or allegedly who was doing paying off all the politicians and trying to create a moat behind him, and hats off to Brian Armstrong, who's been in this whole thing, whether I got burned or not buying on the first day, like slow and steadily, he has been building that company and diversifying, and like their NFT marketplace, like that thing literally soft launched and then you never heard from it again. Like there's some fails in there, but you're right. I think a lot of the chess pieces they've put both internationally and here, and for retail still where they make a lot of their money, but the institutions, they're poised to just take a ton of that money in. Like you said, like all the little Raymond James money manager, like all the clients across the US who get, just everyday Main Street people, USA, like all of those people have to find a place to have this custodied, because, if we had a little local guy who's investing our money and be like, oh, I just bought you some Bitcoin. Like legally, they can't even do that. Like it has to be so by the book. So you're absolutely right. They're
kind of weaving their way in, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's the feel I get from it. And, it's not, and we're looking at nuance. I'm not even claiming that it's a bad thing. I'm just putting a little bit of an alert out there. Like my
Right.
spidey sense is up, like, whoa, now they're really,
Yeah.
positioning, because what's going to be the onboarding for retail folks in the next, in the next, if it switches to the bull, like, people are going to generally, Americans at least, are generally going to start by opening a Coinbase account.
Oh, 100%. And that's where I would unless you just want Bitcoin, and I would say Cash App is pretty easy, but they've got a lot of limitations on how much you can get. Yeah, I would definitely send someone to Coinbase and say dollar cost average into Bitcoin and Ethereum. Yeah, for sure. So, it'll be interesting. I guess my benchmark and where I always push back is, and I've had these conversations in a lot of DMs and Discord too with different groups. Like, for me, if you're going to invest in the next bull market, why not just buy Bitcoin and ETH directly? Now, obviously you have to go through Coinbase, but all these other products, I don't care about, because for me, at the end of the day, once someone knows what they're doing, they're going to buy more Bitcoin and ETH, and hopefully they're going to self-custody and let everything else happen around them. If I had to make a bet, let's say 12 ETFs are approved, in January or February of 24, all at the same time, hopefully, to make it fair for all of them. Like, that to me is a big, tube of toothpaste and steamroller analogy or metaphor, whichever the right word for that is. And the price literally gets squeezed up 100,000 plus. I'm betting on holding the crypto asset and not Coinbase. But in my retirement account or places I can't really get out or move around, I'll put some more Coinbase in there. And after this conversation, I think I'm coming to the same conclusion as you. It's like, well, we all have those little accounts too, that like, we're like, every time I go to buy a new stock or bond or something, like, I'll research a company and I'll be like, it's all like a shell game. Like, everything's so propped up from inflation. Like, and I just end up buying more Bitcoin or ETH.
Yeah, because they're at like 45 times earnings or something. You're like, dude, what? Like,
right.
It's like, yeah. So anyhow, it's an interesting thing to watch evolve. And, God bless a publicly traded company for, looking at ways to, diversify their opportunities moving forward. But there are some elements that we got to look at from that side, from the decentralized lens. The other thing that came out of kind of looking at that for me was I looked at, Coinbase has this thing on their site called Stand with Crypto. And it's pretty interesting because what it's really about, their mission seems to be saying that, hey, there's 52 million Americans who hold crypto. So how can we motivate those 52 million people to communicate and advocate for smart regulation and to be more crypto friendly? And if you look at, and I was just kind of doing some numbers in my head on that. So that's 52 million Americans who hold crypto, and on their stats, and this is all based on the Stand with Crypto analysis, 45% of those 52 million Americans say they will not back anti-crypto candidates. So we're sitting here less than a year.
What percent of that?
45% of the 52 million Americans who hold crypto say they will not back an anti-crypto candidate. So that equals.
What are the other 55% thinking? Like, I know you're basically saying, like, look, that's a big number. That's like 22 million people. And I'm just thinking, like, why wouldn't all 52 million, like, if you've owned crypto, I guess, unless you got so burned buying at the last bull peak, why would you not want your candidate to at least have a neutral, give it a shot crypto stance? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and go with it this way, right? So, it might not be your primary issue. Like, your primary issue may be, more of a social issue. Like, if you have a really strong stance on abortion and you're not going to cross that, so, there's ways to kind of look at it that way. But out of that 52, if 45% say that, that's 23.4 million votes for crypto candidates. In the 2020 election, 155 million people voted, and there was about a 7 million difference in the total, in the general population vote. So not getting into the electoral college, but the popular vote. So I'm just saying, let's keep an eye out on if anyone gets smart enough to figure out how to motivate and, look at this block of Americans and make crypto a defining issue for the upcoming campaign. And, that could be really interesting to watch. And as it turns out right now, kind of how they have it broken down, the strong supporters of crypto, there's 3 that are running for president, right? And 2 of them are Republican with Vivek and DeSantis. And then you have the wild card kind of Robert Kennedy, so he's out there and now he is running independent, right? Like, so he's not doing Democrat right now. And there's no Democrats that have support for crypto on that website. So that have expressed support. So Biden's considered against it. Trump's considered neutral. And then strong support is DeSantis, Vivek, and Robert Kennedy Jr. So I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to think about like how this could play out over the next, 12 months. And maybe we can start, maybe it could be a driver to kind of get our country a little bit more on the right page to move this forward and stop trying to keep it back and just let it go. And let's let this evolve.
Yeah. Good point. I wonder how big obviously we have the numbers of how many people own crypto, and 45% of them, say that they would support any crypto candidate. I wonder how big this issue could or will be amongst all the issues. Like, I know the polls closed yesterday on Tuesday. And I know across the country, I know a lot of states voted to support pro-choice. So I wonder, is that still going to be an issue in the next big 2024 election, or is crypto and some of these new things going to come up? I think one of the reasons why the Democrats, you don't see too many up there, obviously nobody's going to go against Biden because the traditional party, if he's running again, everyone defers and you don't really have a runoff when you have a sitting president, even though he's getting up there in years. You kind of want to see some fresh new blood on all sides getting in there.
Absolutely.
But with 2 leading Republicans and Democrat now becoming independent, being pro-crypto, I mean, it definitely has my attention, and that's important to me, because being pro-crypto to me is saying being freedom to transact, which is a form of freedom of speech.
Yeah. And also it's 61% of the 52 million who hold crypto are in the younger generations. So can it be something that compels a voting block? And I just think it would be really fascinating, from a thought modeling thing, to just think, is crypto potentially going to help, decide who's going to win the next election? And either just with those numbers, I kind of was like, someone's going to be like, hey, there's 52 million votes, or at least 23 million votes. And then what does crypto get out of it? And how different would everything we're struggling with in terms of the SEC and all these battles, how much could that kind of be abated if there's someone who got elected for being pro, this new technology? So
my favorite quote is always from Andreas, and he's like, you can't ban crypto. You can only ban your users and your countrymen and women from crypto, which to me is putting a stake and a halt to innovation that is much needed to make more transparent financial rails and systems. And, again, whether it's banking or finance, we need to see what's going on and with government, dare to dream, but gosh, would that be awesome if we could see more of where our tax dollars go and are broken up, and have people analyze that, just like amateur crypto blockchain sleuths and detectives to say, here's exactly where your money's going, Illinois, here's where your money's going, California, and just see where it goes so we can make better decisions and vote in better people. Now,
yeah, it reminds me of something that Brennan said when we were talking about, the DAOs and, how everything was going. And he's like,
right.
dude, it's on chain. Like people can see, there are people that will figure out everything that's done and be able to do that. So if we could have that sort of transparency on the allocation of taxes and things from that, like it'd be a much better world, frankly. Like
Yep.
that
And
would
that's
be,
the goal of this show is to, eventually we're all going to get older and sit in our rocking chairs and drink our country time lemonade, and we're going to pass it on to our children, and they're going to pass it on to their children. So, that's why, especially with politics, like I wish some of these older folks would retire and make way for people who have newer, fresher ideas, who have seen, who grew up, we grew up half analog, half digital. We crossed over in our early 20s to this digital world. So we've seen both, but these newer generations, they only know digital and cell phones and internet. And, we need more leadership and more forward thinking to keep the economy humming, but also to create these transparencies. So I'm excited for it, and it's something I think that's worth fighting for.
yeah, well said, and completely agree. So shifting gears, like we kind of were talking in the beginning, we were kind of, just saying that we're going into fall, into winter or whatever, but it feels kind of like things are thawing a little bit. So, I don't know if it's just the ETF talk or what it is, but it feels like, like our old friend FOMO is starting to develop its muscles and presence a little bit more than months ago.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if everyone saw that Simpsons episode. It was I think we're literally in season 34
35.
or 5. Is it 5?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I remember when it first came out on the Tracy Ullman show back in 88, 89, I think. And
it had, you got to remember that show coming out of the Tracy Ullman or whatever, that really helped to launch Fox as the fourth network.
Oh yeah. For sure.
It was pivotal in the development of, that for sure.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't the Great Space Coaster. It was The Simpsons. That was the first show that came out that just killed it. Like Tracy Ullman and a couple of those were pretty good, but The Simpsons just killed it. And, obviously The Simpsons, I will always remember like the Conan O'Brien writing years, like seasons 1 or 2 through maybe 5 or 6 until he left, and Monorail and all that, the Sideshow Bob stuff. Yes. Those were my favorite, but The Simpsons kind of did what South Park did, I think, to stay relevant. Like at some point you can only go so deep on Milhouse's, historical family life and the mom and dad's divorce. At some point you got to just go to current events. And The Simpsons has done that with the Treehouse of Horrors number 35. I believe it was the first of the 3 little, 7 or 8 minute minuets you get. Yeah. And it's all about, NFTs and, about FOMO, and the FOMO's run out, and, take a look at it. We're not going to, the point of this isn't to talk about that as much as it is. It feels like, we're heading into winter, but it feels like spring for, for crypto and NFTs. And as Disco said, the ETFs, it feels pretty inevitable at this point, even if we get one more surprise from good old Gary Gensler, who's made a lot of wrong moves and lost a lot of court cases recently. It still feels like the path of an inevitability is here. Yeah, thank you.
And it's interesting because the path to the inevitability is really just going back to the fundamentals of kind of the base case for Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? Like it's the thing when I first got interested, it was like, oh, you got to understand a little bit about Bitcoin. It's really like, you can do the digital gold or the store of value or all those elements. So it's not like the themes changed. It's just like, it's coming more into acceptance that, okay, this is building, it is happening, and it is inevitable. Like there is going to be only X amount of these available. It's already established itself as a form of value and currency. So Gary, like you can try, but you're not going to be able to put the genie back. So that's happening. And then you have kind of the same thing with Ethereum going on, where it's like, yeah, but, and this was always my point. Like, and I think you told me a long time ago when I was like, what are you interested in when we were first kind of connected on this, and you're like, there's just so many smart people building so many things on Ethereum right now, and we haven't seen
there's
that
a
all
lot of
come to life.
developers.
So it's not like it's it seems like people are getting further away from like, oh, it's pirates money and kind of that stuff, and it's starting to really.
Well, that's still out there. I mean, like you're absolutely right, but like Warren obviously and Bloomberg, like they just came out with a bunch of articles, or wrote one article and just said like, except for fueling Hamas and just the same old lies. And the weirdest thing about it is there are a ton of people on the Bloomberg staff who cover crypto quite intelligently. So I don't know if there's a battle at the top where the editors are more plugged into the politics and they're, having the dinners and the Hamptons and are being told like, hey, marching orders are still to completely
status quo.
Yeah, pour the water over the crypto fire. But I imagine a lot of people who are experts in Bloomberg were like, what is going on? But, this ETF inevitability, it feels real this time. And, it's such a huge benefit. Think about like, is it just a store of value that's separate from stocks and bonds and, like, cause pension funds, it's not like they can buy big swaths of real estate and stuff. Like they need to invest, in the market and things that kind of be tracked on paper or whatever. And it just seems to me like a 1 to 3% spot ETF of Bitcoin, or I'd say like 7 or 8% or 10% is such an excellent hedge against what everybody is saying is a very overheated, like 60-year bond market cycle that could just start tanking. Like the financial rails are changing. And the more I look at charts and graphs, the more I'm like, oh, crypto, like, as Andrea said, it's like crypto doesn't care about your politics. It doesn't care about any of that. Like it just is. And we can regulate it. We can do everything we can. But as you said, Disco, you can't let the genie, you can't stuff it back in the bottle. Like it's in some way, shape, or form here to stay. And if they try and just like outlaw it or ban it or collect it from you, that's where those 52 million people are going to be like, oh, heck no. Just like with gold back in the day. So,
well, the beautiful part is that it's like, at its core, it's policy agnostic, so what we're dealing with now and what, people would be smart to hedge against in the future is we have these people coming in and manipulating markets by, printing more money. We talk about, some of these NFT communities diluted things by adding another, collection within it. What do you think we've been doing for however many years in terms of the money flow? It's like, print more. Hey, here's a check for COVID. And it's like, dude, I didn't ask for some of that. Like,
well, right. That's just the government. But think about then the layer below, like, I'm not a silver or gold expert, but everywhere you hear, there are people who hold, and there are probably big institutions and banks that hold so much gold and silver, they can control and manipulate the market. So I think it's funny in the NFT space, and even with the shitcoin space, with all the Pepe and all these coins that spike and then disappear, like we're learning on the fly these fundamental things, because there's people, these whales in our ecosystem that would be minnows among the institutional big TradFi investors, and they're playing these games where they're gobbling up, if there's a new collection of, Azuki or this Chaos Roads that I'm going to talk about in a second, and they snap up, let's say there's only 400 Chaos Roads, this beautiful art that's all on chain, and they grab like 40 or 50 or 60 of them. They just took a part off the market, and they can slowly over time, if it takes off, pepper those out. So it's funny that big ecosystems mirror little ecosystems, but so many of us, beyond the reading of Andreas and Von Mises and all these old monetary policy and just what is money, we've learned there, but we're also learning by seeing, and sometimes unfortunately getting burned too.
Yeah. And it's some of it's just so odd to gauge, right? Like, and it's this FOMO factor that's just subliminal, and then it's tied into, we did a piece on like the X algorithm and everything. And it's like, as a user and a scroller, you know, I'm not super active with pontificating my thoughts or ideas, but I absorb quite a bit of what I
Right.
see. And it's so interesting how such a small group of people can suddenly enter your consciousness or your subconsciousness and be like, well, am I really missing out on Chainlink? Or I keep seeing all this about, you know, injective. I need to be, whoa, I don't want to miss out on the
Yeah.
next run. Get my bags ready. And then it's like, dude, I have no idea what it's doing.
I think that's a really good point. I think part of this show is to help people become more FOMO proof and FOMO resistant, because like you can feel it coming, and I can't stand shows that are always predicting like, oh, the bear's over, here comes the bull. I feel like people have been predicting that since 3 days after we got the bear with the FTX stuff, and really even before that with the Three Arrows Capital stuff before that. Like, here it comes, it's ending. Oh, once we unwind FTX. But this one does feel a little different. Now, it might go back. I am not predicting that we're in a bull, but it feels pretty inevitable. And I know it because I'm starting to like look back on, you know, either Blur or OpenSea or Foundation, like at different pieces of art and different things I want to collect. And it's exciting again. And, you know, when the FOMO takes over, like right now we're just getting like the little spoon-fed drips of it. But once you get hijacked, I think part of the show is to like, let's protect each other and let's buy stuff. Yeah. But let's buy stuff hopefully at the right strategic times for, you know, appreciation in the future, or just for enjoyment of the art, at least buying it at a reasonable price.
And having us be able to have, you know, kind of the framework of, you know, analyzing what we really want to do or what we really want to be, whether it's what sort of investor or what sort of collector, or, you know, but just kind of being able to vocalize it and talk things out a little bit helps, as opposed to just being kind of alone in your basement. Like, I'm in, click, I bought, you know, and like thinking it through a little bit, because in having conversations, like I'm in a bit of a, you know, kind of battle with myself of like, do I just want to try to, you know, acquire or accumulate enough of the asset, like enough ETH, but then I start seeing, I'm like, yeah, but I really need to get involved in some of these other, you know, things and collect that now. So I'm looking at like, okay, let me, you know, try to find some money in the couch. And I have that feeling like I'm super excited for like the next couple of days to make a couple splashes, because I've been waiting and it didn't feel right before. And I just want to kind of register and check myself from
time.
just, thank you.
I think it's time for you to get something and get involved with a group, because like I said, the first couple bears I was in, I did it alone, and I didn't even have a close buddy to talk to about like the bear and the bull and what it meant. And not even that, all the stuff that I was learning, because I wasn't going to sell anyway, but it just would have been more fun. And now that's why NFT communities are so fun. They put a social layer on top of crypto. So think about it. So, you know, Bitcoin maxis are saying Bitcoin is just money. It's just a store of value. Well, ordinals kind of screwed that up, at least for some Bitcoiners. But then it creates these clubs, and at least to commiserate during the bears and to find people to build with, like having money, like, you know, like you have money, I have money. It's not like we sit around and be like, hey, I have money, like let's sit and collect. You know, we might talk about investments and stuff, but with crypto, with NFTs, you're merging seamlessly art and money and store of value and technology and computer. And I think that's why so many people are so into it. And we just like, if we could, we just go to everybody at our different activities and clubs and family and be like, wake up, you, like join us. Not because I want you to like be a multi-millionaire. I want you to like understand where this is all going and what it is, because it's so cool.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Like I think that the emergence of the NFT overall, like probably the biggest benefit was that it was able to connect like-minded people. And when you're connected in that, then that really goes to that, you know, kind of different way to experience the world. And, you know, you were giving me an example of you talking to someone in one of your groups and saying, hey, I don't know if, you know, there's anything really cool being built here. And then someone was like, oh, really? You know, and you get your eyes open to new things. And then it's like, wow, I was sleeping on something that I wasn't in the loop on. So, you know, I think that that's a really cool and endearing element of it. And I'll be making a move on something within the next 24 hours. I can say that.
Oh, 24 hours. I like that. Maybe we should even
myself.
Maybe we should even take a look at the stuff you're looking at. Yeah, I think it was Next Alpha, because I've been big into Bitcoin ordinals lately. And he was saying like Ethereum, there's so much cool stuff with art going on right now. And I was like, dude, all the ingenuity and innovation right now is on the Bitcoin side. And he's like, have you seen Chaos Roads? And I'm like, click, 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 click. Oh my God, this is so cool. So that's kind of a perfect segue into, we're just going to kind of share as you get into the FOMO. Like I've been doing more ETH validators, because for me, like in this next bull cycle, I would say my goal is to be just, you know, have ETH staked and have Bitcoin and accumulate those dollar cost average in and prepare for this ETF and hopefully ride the roller coaster straight up on that if we're lucky. But also to kind of pare down things. This Azuki I've had 8777 I've had since literally maybe a week or two after. I got 2 on reveal day, and then this was the third one I bought like 2 weeks after. And I love this Azuki, but you know, it was time to part with it. And the funny thing is I did not even get 7.25. And when I sold it, Disco, I didn't even tell you this. So I sold this 2 days ago. I got 6.5 ETH. It's there in the blockchain. There's no reason to hide that. And one of the people who had been kind of kicking the tires on it in the last year was like, dude, why didn't you tell me? I'm like, I haven't heard from you in 5 months and now you're bidding 7.25. I'm like, you should have reached out to me. I would have given you all that, because the guy who bought it didn't even want the derivatives I have, like the animations that went along with it. He's like, no, those are easy to get. I can just get those. And this person's a true collector, and I was like, dude, well, I'll give them to you for what I got them for if you can get it. But I mean, the price is already up, but I don't even care. Like I wanted to kind of practice what I preach on this show. And that was like, the more I learn, the more I'm in the space. I think if I had to say, like from an anthropological view, I think you come into NFTs and you buy something that you really like, but you also stick around for the community, and you realize that layer is so sticky and so enjoyable, sitting on the spaces with people and learning about them and meeting them in real life at these awesome Azuki garden parties. But, you know, as you go on and as time goes on, I think you get more into like the longevity of it, how immutable is the art, how close to on chain is it? You know, we know Azukis are on IPFS, which is, you know, it's the storage layer of the Ethereum blockchain, but you know, they could theoretically go away if Chiru Labs stops paying the bill, or any of these guys. So it's unlikely, but if it's not pinned anymore, it could go away. So I parted with her. It's already worth more, but you know what? I don't regret a thing, because I know it will wind up in the hands of a holder who appreciates it more than me. Yeah, and maybe tells the story that, you know, before the Zaga FUD, I was going to tell a great story with her, how she owned this diner, but, you know, downstairs is where her kind of super secret, cool undercover action happened. And, you know, with a fireball trait, like there was cool stuff to share there, but I knew it was time to move on. And the reason I sold her, it was kind of a quick, like, hey, if you're interested still, here it is. And he's like, hey, how about this price? And it was like 0.3 less than he offered a week ago. I'm like, you know what? That's fine, because I wanted to get this curling head noun, and I wound up bidding on it and I didn't get it. And that we'll share at the end of the story. I bid 10.5 ETH because that's the most I was willing to pay for a noun. But, you know, it just, with kind of talking about the FOMO, everything's thawing now. And I was excited again to kind of like reshuffle what I'm owning in my portfolio and the communities I want to be in. Like, I know nouns had the double fork, huge, obviously massive fallout from some of the oldest, biggest holders there. But nouns as a DAO, as we talked with Brennan, there are fascinating aspects to it. So I'd be coming in fresh without all the old baggage. Like, I might have been bitter too. I don't know. I can't predict what I would have been, but had I come in, and I'm still going to look at nouns, but for very different reasons. My father was a curler. That would have, like, the curling head one would have been super cool to me. But you know what? I had a max I was willing to bid like 2 years ago.
Smart.
And 2 years ago in the bull market, I would have, like, all the nouns right now are going between 20 and 21 ETH, I think, from the arbitrage, from the fork. That's a whole nother show, but
And it's all option.
and I knew it was going to go there. And I was like, you know what, 10.5, if I get lucky. The thing was ending in the middle of the night. I'm like, sometimes people forget, like, one went for 6 a couple weeks ago, and, it was probably a Sunday and it ended in the middle of the night, and people just at some point forgot to bid it up to more of the floor market value, and that person totally scored. So I'm like, meh, but I didn't get it. So I did end up. Please.
Let me interrupt really quick, because I want to just note something that I feel from this conversation, and I just have felt from a couple recent conversations, and it's what we're talking about from the thawing perspective. It feels like before, if I was going to buy something in the, like, months and months ago, I'd feel more kind of like ashamed about doing it, as opposed to being so excited about doing it. And it feels like like it's just kind of shifted from being like, well, I'm having this dirty sandwich I shouldn't have, to, yes, I love sandwiches. And it's like back on, in terms of, like, I can be like, yeah, really, we're going to get some stuff because it's changing, and it's like super exciting, and all of the pain, that does kind of bring people together and kind of weeds out tourists, as people say, or whatever. It's like, dude, it just feels like it's time to get on, and you need some fun, like, it needs to be fun again, because it certainly hasn't been fun watching FUD and things going to zero. And, so when you were like, dude, I made a move and I'm doing this and this, I'm like, it just felt like a lightness in your step,
It feels good. Yeah. So. I love, and the sandwich analogy is very appreciated, and so tip to the hat for you. It's a great analogy. And it's funny, because had you bought 3-4 months ago when it was dirty and it felt crappy, that was the right time to buy, right? Like, when everything was just like nobody wants to touch anything, and that's the currencies themselves. And it's the NFTs, like, those are the times to buy. And that's what I mean. Like, when you have FOMO brain, where you, like, the fear of missing out, where you cannot just, like, you can almost, like, not stop your hands on the keyboard from doing it.
It's like you're an addict.
That often is not the time to buy. Whereas the time where you're like, I couldn't, this feels so, why would I waste hard-earned ETH to get this NFT of a curling stone head, or whatever it is. Like, it's so funny. But then when it goes up, you're like, oh, here we go. So,
But again, we need to monitor it, but that's for everyone listening. And that's something that, if we can help, just you got to kind of process things. And the point of, being mindful and, being at our stage of life or whatever, one of the things I hope that we can impart, and something that we picked up, is being mindful and understanding, at least knowing, like, okay, this is FOMO ticking in a little bit, and weighing if that's making you make an irrational decision, or even like, yeah, you can wait, or you can have a limit. And I think that the 10.5 ETH limit is a very good progression and maturity displayed from experience, and that's good to have kind of in your playbook moving forward. Like, I think that when you look at what kind of investor or what kind of collector, I think that you need to be able to put in those sort of things, so that you're not sitting there at the auction, like, raising the paddle, like, yes.
Yeah. And the FOMO is only gonna get worse. Like, if we are at the foothills of the next bull, like, when it's full on and you see something on crypto Twitter and it's like, hey, new mint from this excellent artist you've never heard of, you're like, must buy, and you're like grabbing both your hands with your feet to try and not log in and go to the keyboard. But so one thing really quick that I just hope that doesn't happen if we do see a next run is,
I just hope that we could lay to rest like the Lambo pictures and those sort of pictures and that sort of FOMO-y stuff. Like I hope that we can progress from that. And,
It'll
I
come.
doubt we will, but
It'll
I
be
just
there.
don't need to see people pimping. And, that's been refreshing to not see that.
But again, it's all about, if you got your garden outside, like, we've got
Yeah.
a couple new gardens, you got to keep pruning and weeding. So like, it's funny, like there's a lot of influencers, some people will probably be surprised that I don't follow, but if somebody feels even shilly at all or not authentic, or I just don't vibe with them and they're getting a ton of attention, because right now X will throw them in your timeline.
Yeah.
I just mute them, or worst case I'll block them. And so a lot of the stories, people are like, oh, did you hear what happened to BitBoy, or hear what happened to this person? I'm like, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
Because if that's the topic of conversation that this certain group of people are talking about, I've probably pruned the garden enough where I simply don't hear it, because you don't get to rent space in my head rent free, right? So that's the goal anyway.
Great point.
Yeah. So what I did get is I didn't get the curling head noun that I really wanted to be a part of that community, but Chaos Roads, this is all on chain. I wanted to practice what I preached. Azuki is fine, but I wanted to move on to be more like my mom and be more of an art collector and things that I appreciate and people who are pushing the envelope. Because in this last bear market, I think the art held its value the most, but also in the long run, like, what do you want to put on your walls? And this one is super cool. So Chaos Roads, and again, this isn't financial advice. This is just me being excited, sharing my new like bouncy ball with everybody, or what's at the bottom of my Cracker Jack box. But Chaos Roads it evolves over time with entropy and chaos. It is all entirely on chain. Even the like generator is on the EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine. It compiles the website Mint was straight into the EVM. Like, this is as on chain gets. And, I was looking at it a couple weeks ago and it was on my radar, and I hadn't broken that seal yet. I've been doing a lot of validators and just kind of tucking the money away and doing the annuity of getting Ethereum to grow on itself. So I wasn't buying stuff. And finally I jumped in, and you know what? Somebody had swept the floor like 3 days before. So I could have bought it like 0.4, 0.5 ETH. And I was like, especially the first one I just did a sale, and I feel good about it. I moved on. I really want to get a Chaos Road. And so I got this piece. And the cool thing is, over time, with each block, it changes. So there's the picture, there's a poem, consciousness seeks order, reaching for the sky through audio waves. Chaos swirls nearby, 149 levels deep. The answers lie. Behold, Barak in the token URL. So very cool. That poem changes over time. The entropy of this changes over time. And there's a third element that are all on chain, fully immutable. That is the sound. So let me play it for you. So it's pretty loud. I don't want to overwhelm the ears, but it's cool. It almost sounds like what you would think of like deep space if aliens like came in and you had the big radar like finally catching what sounds would be. But it's that those sounds, this picture and the poem become more entropic over time, and the holders are able to connect the wallet to the website and take it back in time and see when it was less entropic. So it's super cool. I'm excited to share, again, only because I love the design of it. I love the concept of it. And I love that it also contradicted what I thought I believed, which was like, no, like autoglyphs, CryptoPunks, like you gotta eventually, everyone needs to ladder up and collect the old school stuff. And there's some truth to that, but that's one kind of collector. But there's also so much new stuff challenging what art is and what the Ethereum blockchain and other blockchains can do.
So you basically took us on a journey that you went on over the last, X amount of days, hours, whatever it may be, of something that you held in your collection that gave you joy and value up to a certain point. You then basically reshuffled it to say, okay, I'm going to free something up to be able to do what I've been kind of talking about. Like, what's this positioning of, what you have? You can be loyal to a brand as much as you want, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be loyal to you, and to see something that is multifaceted and generative and on chain, that it's almost like representing a potential 2.0 to Chicago as a collector, and, kind of scouring the ground early before it becomes like, oh, this is the accepted kind of premium. Like, this is where it's going. But the fact that I just love that it's, triple, if not more faceted in terms of you get the art, which you can enjoy from a visual perspective.
Right.
You get the poem, which hits you from a literary, but it kind of is at least tying that. And then you get kind of the close encounters, I don't necessarily call it music, but I know it's musical. Maybe that's what music's going to become in X amount of years. So it's just like proof that even someone like yourself, who's been in the space for a long time, can be surprised, and surprised in a good way, by just being open to seeing what else is being built. And it makes me even more excited to think about all the other things that we can still discover that we don't even know, or that people are building right now. Like, there's new things that are going to come out that I think are just this is a representation of just the next generation of like, holy cow, I did not know that this could be done on ETH. And I didn't know that this could happen, and that you could collect it that way. So even how you can go to the website and connect wallet and go back to different versions, or control kind of how it flows and how it evolves, like, that's a lot different than a PFP.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm excited to go on the journey, and especially with you, like I said, the benefit for me is, I could have easily, having gotten in 2015, I could have easily just been a Bitcoin maxi. That's not really who I am to see like, this is the first one, this is the only use case, it's immutable, it's money, and that's it. But the evolution, like, I'll keep evolving, because think about all the rabbit holes that you can go down, and all the different industries and use cases it can serve to better humanity. Again, identity, school, transparency of government, finance. I mean, again, like, on and on and on and on. This cool little picture, just to kind of close the loop on this, you can see that you can go back in time and you see how it's like more broad brush paint strokes of the art piece. I believe this is number one here. And then it goes on, becomes more entropic over time. And then, so you can scroll back and forth. It's just, it's cool. And it also, I know you say like, you can get it early on the next thing. I would even challenge that premise. You buy things that interest you and things that you love. And obviously I want it to go up in price. And if I had to, and my tastes evolve to sell it for something else, I don't think I'm going to sell this one ever. But my curiosity over time changes, and I'm willing to be open to that, to keep learning, to see where my collection goes. I mean, think about it, on Cyber, and we're not even all, if it were up to MetaQuest and Zucker dude, we'd all be like wearing these headsets in each other's virtual spaces with our art galleries. And I know you just did one recently, with a guy who's heavy in the music scene, and you said it was actually like you went in kind of like, let's see what kind of experience, and you said it was actually enjoyable. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I think that right now people are, it's not in vogue to talk about, right? But the kind of metaverse gatherings are a way for community. You talk about the NFT communities and being in the discords and things like that. Take that to another level, and it's the same even as how we kind of felt taking the unit classes. It was like everyone's jumping around like, hey, we're here. And it's like, people are going to start doing it. And it's just so easy that if you want to do like a record release party with an artist, or an artist wants to do it, it's a heck of a lot easier to reach more people by doing it in, one of these developing metaverses. So that's not
100%. And think
like,
about it. You've got your headphones on set to the volume that you want in the perfect stereo that you want while they play music. And then, between songs or at intermission, you can literally go around to talking to people, and there's not that awkwardness of real life and who you are. You can be anything you want. And you'll probably have a lot of nerfs on there with weird conversation that doesn't go anywhere, but you probably have a lot of super interesting people and really good conversation.
Yeah. And it's fun, you can you can pick your outfits or whatever, kind of play your different vibe. You can be a pickle if you want or whatever it is. But I think the other thing that's kind of interesting is how the one thing that really kind of stuck with me on that experience was they had merch available. So like you could go to, like, how you go outside of a show and there's the merch stand, you go to the merch stand and you can just look and pick and buy whatever, from that tour. So I'm very bullish on that down the road. I know that, that Zuckerberg and all that kind of, took the narrative away, and maybe that's good because maybe it'll be built the right way and it'll be cool. But I do think that there's these new things that we haven't really experienced yet. And I'm excited.
You want it to be, when it does take off, it doesn't all have to be open source, but you want a good open source option because it fits in with the decentralization, because I do not want Mark Zuckerberg or really Apple or anyone owning my persona in the virtual space. Just like with social media, we talked about Twitter X last week, and we're, it's a great service, but we are totally at the mercy of, and it shapes the behaviors of the algorithm. I can't even imagine what these virtual reality environments would do to shape your behavior and the lengths they would go with advertisements. Like, it already feels kind of gross, but we've both experienced virtual reality in its best ways. And with hanging out with other people and talking to people, there is something cool and beautiful. And I think we're surprised it hasn't come sooner, but hopefully that gives time for the open source guys to catch up, because that's that frontier is important, like you said, to just get right.
Yeah. If it goes wrong, it could be way wrong. So you see little pieces of it coming out that you're like, okay, this should stick. This should be, put into the playbook moving forward. And I just love the dynamic nature of what this Chaos Road kind of represents. And I'm excited to learn more. And you know what, even in looking at it really quick, I was looking at the website after you mentioned it. I'm like, oh, what's he doing? Oh, I got to check that out. That looks a bit interesting. And then then it goes into talking about how the person who was inspired to start this was inspired by this fingerprint style. And then you can go there, and it's like, that's what's so,
that's what's rabbit hole. Yeah. And it gets you closer to what type
your
of
core is,
collector you are, and who you are, does that feels pretty good. And I feel like it represents part of who I am, someone pushing the limits, not only of art and poetry and sound, but also of math and technology, and combining all those. What a cool form of art. Whereas, before things were oils on canvases and, obviously all different kinds of art, sculptures, and then it evolved. But digital art is a medium in and of itself. And the cool stuff is the things that you can't do anywhere else.
Yeah. That it can only live in that ecosystem. And I think that one other thing that's kind of cool to think about the evolution is there's only 400, right?
There are 400 of these. Yeah.
Yeah. So right there, the scarcity, like it's like learning lessons from the past and making things a little bit better. And I wonder if deep down, maybe like since when I entered into the space, it was, at the top, when I was seeing things, and I couldn't justify spending, when ETH was almost $4,000 and, one of the top NFT programs or projects was, 20 to 30 ETH. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, dude, I can't do that. That doesn't make sense. I'm not buying it. So now
a lot of money.
I might be of this new generation from this bear market where I appreciate some of these different things. And that's probably why I didn't jump in and, buy some of the other collections. And I'm more excited and inspired by seeing some of these things that are birthed out of this bear market.
Well, and you create a new group of people who rally around a certain new thing, and you're like, hey, it's, it's like generational stuff. Like, hey, like, yeah, you guys did some cool stuff, but like here we come with our new ideas, and this is what I'm hitching my wagon to. So the other thing I did with the extra ETH from the sale of 877 was I invested a little in Rocket Pool. You can stake without putting in 32 ETH, which is huge. So again, this is not, I didn't know a ton about Rocket Pool. We had talked about Lido and Rocket Pool versus solo staking because, Ethereum staking to me is like the new annuity where not only do I think ETH is going to appreciate, but the more the ETH chain gets used, the more it's a deflationary asset where ETH actually is being burned and the supply goes down. When you're staking, you're getting, a part of the rewards for the transactions happening, which is just beautiful. So I set up with 8 ETH, you can set up a Rocket Pool node. So it's pretty interesting. I set it up with 8 ETH, and then they do make you buy like a quarter of that in RPL, which is the Rocket Pool token. And I am always weary when they make you buy the token, but I'm like, this one, that the outstanding supply of tokens is 19 million. So it's roughly what Bitcoin is. It's not a ton, but as you can see, it puts pressure on the Rocket Pool token because I had to do those to stake, but then I stake those 8 ETH. And what they do is they find people who don't have a node, a validator node, and they get to jump in with the other 24 ETH. And together we make a 32 ETH node, and I get 14% commission off what they make. So not only do I make my validator, my staking validator fees from my 8 ETH, I also get 15% of what they make. So I'm basically like driving the train with my 8 ETH, and I'm like, hop on board everybody with your 24 ETH. The fee to get on board is 15% of your rewards, which is super cool. And that, ETH rewards right now are at 3% right now. With these and with the Rocket Pool rewards, they're saying it's more like 7%. So they get 3, I get like 7% plus the Rocket Pool rewards. Now holding an extra token, could that go down? Is that a little scary? But for the next bull, I'm like, I'll take a little gamble with Rocket Pool and get this 7.5. So I get my APR plus their 14%. So it adds up to 7%. So I'm like, why wouldn't I do this with all my solo stakers? So it raises interesting questions for me, and only time will tell as I actually see the numbers. Yeah. So you were going to ask a question. Sorry.
No, I'm just processing. So basically anyone can go and stake any amount, but if you want to do the next step of running the node, then it becomes, you have to kick in a percent of the Rocket Pool token, right? And that enables you to be able to run the node.
Yes, and that locks that token in. And I had the option to put in from 178 to like 300 and something Rocket Pool. The more I put in with my 8 ETH node, the more rewards I would have got from that. Wow. I just, based on what I just sold in the Azuki, I only had so much. So I got just above 178. So it worked out okay because I'm just experimenting with it now. Like, do I like it? And this is another community ecosystem. I can now like go on the Discord and be like, hey, what's going on here? Or just be, the lurker fly in the wall like most X users are, and just see like, what's the vibe there? Does it feel like it's growing? Here's an interesting thing though, what I've already learned, and sometimes you have to learn only by doing like this, is because I put in the Rocket Pool and locked that in, their share of the total market of staked ETH is only 2.9% because you need more train conductors. So when I showed up, they probably had that money. Like there's probably, go to Great America and the lines out the door. Everybody's like, yeah, I want to stake, but they need the guy who's going to bring the full node and let you jump in with your 16 to 24 ETH in the back cars to make your validator reward. So it's a fascinating system, but that's also what's keeping them from taking more share away from Lido, which is, almost 32% now. So it's an interesting problem to have. And what makes me a little nervous is like, well, are they incentivized to lower the amount you would need to stake of the rocket pool, thus locking up less, thus making it more liquid, thus making it less valuable? So I don't love those games. I'm not saying it's Ponzi, but I'm going to see how this one goes. Like I said, I'm still staking the ETH. So those 8 ETH, I get my rewards anyway. Everything else is a bonus. So instead of buying more NFTs, I was like, I can always pull this out at any time I want. But for now, let's try a new thing, because there's nothing better than learning by doing.
So I was going to ask, how long are you locked in?
Well, the node is pre-launch. It doesn't even go live for another 12 days. So you're not locked in really at all, because if you think about it, like ETH validators, when I set those validators up, I had to wait, one of them I had to wait like 5 or 6 weeks on to get out. No, but everyone wants to stake and make more ETH on top of their ETH and earn that annuity. Nobody's leaving right now. And I'm sure for different reasons, some people are, but so the wait to get out is, let me see, 1 block, which is, a couple minutes.
So let's say I have 8 ETH and I have, 200 or whatever, RPL. Is there anything else that I need to be functioning as this stake and run node? Like, was there a hard, like any materials I need outside of just doing that?
Yes, you need to learn how to run a node. So I was already solo staking. So with DApp node, and they actually have a module for Rocket Pool, which I had remembered. I'm like, let's Disco asked me the question. Let's dig a little deeper. So we do have a more deep dive on just ETH staking and validating in general. We can compare the 3 biggies, which is really like Lido, which is the easiest one, where you literally just put it in, you get your STETH token, and it accrues rewards for you. You don't have to validate at all. They have very few validators running all that stuff. Rocket Pool, which is way more independent, where folks like me come in who are validators, they need us to run it, but that's also limited their growth. And then obviously solo staking, where you need to eventually accumulate 32 ETH to run a full validating node.
Awesome. Well, I think we should, like, as a show, I'd like to keep updated on, the interaction, how it works. You kind of just set it up, and, I think it's valuable. And I love kind of the experiment side of it. And you're right. You're never going to know until you jump in the water if it's warm or cold and how it works. So let's see how that plays out. I, again, am going to coattail you a little bit on that and see, and in full disclosure, I'd love to be doing the 32 at my house, but there's obviously other solutions and ways to do it. And
there's ways to build up to it. Like, it doesn't have to be right away. It can be crawling, then walking, then running. And, that's kind of the dollar cost averaging methodology anyway. Like, learn about it, see how it feels. Like, does adding the Rocket Pool token and having these quote unquote governance tokens, does that help? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think because it's so much is locked up, it's a good thing. But, with one proposal in this DAO, that could change, and that all could become liquid. And then at least the Rocket Pool side, I lose out on that, and that value of what I had to buy goes down. But I kind of did it for the ETH staking anyway, and the experimentation at this point.
And you almost did it. It almost kept you from buying something else. Like it was almost a conservative way.
That is true.
And even though you're learning and experimenting, it's kind of taking money out of your wallet, out of your, back pocket, and seeing how it goes. So that
was my FOMO hand coming out like bus. Like, I literally, when I sold that Azuki, I was like, what can I buy with this? And I was looking at 6529 memes and stuff like that. But I'm like, take your time. You wanted a Chaos Rogue, get it. Stake the ETH. You can always pull it out if there's something that draws your attention. But by having it locked, even though I could unlock it very quickly, it's just one more layer, because I'm earning money on that and earning interest. So you're going to be a lot less likely to pull something out that's interest bearing you're going to think a lot harder on that FOMO than if it's just sitting there in your hot wallet. You're like, must buy, must not buy, must, and then the next day you wake up, you're like, what did I just get? Like, what is this thing?
Yeah. Oh, great. I have the collection. So that's a cool story and process to go through. And
for sure.
That was great. Where do we want to go now? Do we want to,
well, I'd say I like, let's do some follow-up from past shows. I think we can touch on some of those because there's the beauty of the things we're covering. It definitely, we're in show 8 or 9 or whatever, but it feels good. Right. Like a lot of the things we're talking about, we're seeing other much bigger media folks who are more established, like then talk about it too. And we're not patting ourselves in the back, but just to say like, we're riding on the wave of where I think a lot of the energy is going into this next, market, and it's exciting. So, the first one, we did a show on nouns, and I talked about a curling club head guy that went for 20.5 ETH. And, it's interesting. We talked with Brennan. I'm a huge nouns fan, and I'm an even bigger fan of the DAO they created. Disco, I don't know if you know this, but Farcaster is based off of the nouns DAO. They basically made it so you could literally click a button and replicate it and create your own DAO. So to me, that's the most fascinating part of this. And just
so they actually spun it off of that from the wow.
Yeah. So Farcaster, it's I believe they call it Purple, but you can be a part of the conversation and how decisions are made there. So again, probably a place I will join sooner than later as I do more and more on Farcaster and find the conversation a little more calming, and whereas replying is much more literally replying to someone's post and having a good conversation is actually rewarded in the algorithm there. So, but one thing with nouns that I wish I asked Brennan that didn't, I don't want to even say this doesn't sit right with me, but I think the biggest problem nouns is going to face is, what was it, 479 left in the first fork. So literally all those nouns went back into the main treasury of nouns, and those people took the treasury value. Let's say at that point there was 800 nouns and there was, 40,000 ETH they took, and it was half. They took the 20,000 ETH with them, gave up the PFP that went back on the main chain to the treasury. But oddly, they actually hold the forked PFP as well. So this now 904, I believe this was, the other curling one which was 892, or it wasn't too long ago. That one forked. So it exists also in the second one. And what the second fork is doing is they're investing it in Lido to, at least while it's sitting there, to accrue interest based on it. Why wouldn't they? But the original one, so now you almost, the split personality of these two, we'll call it noun 832, that is in the main treasury and it's in the secondary treasury, and both can be sold. So it gets kind of weird. But where my biggest concern is, all the nouns keep going for 20 to 21 ETH. I assume that is an arbitrage, because whatever the current treasury is, and just so you know, the current folks who weren't forked, who the people who've stuck with it, they actually took a cue from the people who forked, and they're investing in Lido too. They're like, why aren't we earning interest on this? So right away, it was a no-brainer. So maybe the fork will spur more energy. But all these nouns are sitting there in the treasury. They haven't gone to anybody yet. Every day, every 24 hours-ish, a new noun comes out and it goes up for auction for the rest of eternity. How are they still going for 20 ETH when over half of the nouns in the original smart contract, if you will, are now like in a treasury kind of owned by nobody? Like, to me, that spells you need to unwind first before you find the value. So if you say it, let's just say it was 50% really don't have a home right now. Well, that would theoretically make the value of these at most 10 ETH, but with the demand, I suspect it's probably lower. They're not just going to dump them out to everybody, because obviously that would dilute the valuation big time. So they've got to be strategic on who they give them to. So in one part, it's a fresh, it's a restart, it's a rebirth with the people who want to perpetuate the nouns meme and the glasses and everything we talked about. And on one side, there's this unwind that has to happen that kind of makes the value, in my opinion, inflated right now. So
they just are consistently, you said that there was one case that you saw where it like went for like under 10 at like 6 or something, but that's an anomaly. Like for the most part, they're settling close to 20, if not north of 20 daily.
Yeah. And I suspect that's because these arbitragers can come in, buy a bunch, get a bunch, and then come in looking at the treasury number. They can then, when they have enough mass, which is, I think Brennan said like 20%, they could fork again and maybe they paid 20.5 ETH for it, and they can get back, when you break it out by each noun, get back like 21.7 ETH. So it's purely this margin arbitrage play. That's the only reason I can think why the value would stay. But at some point, the great, musical chair fork game has to end. And this seems like it would unwind to be a much lower number. I mean, I see in proposals, I'm following those now, and they're starting to give away more and more in these proposals. They're giving away these nouns to people. Gift noun 181 a Sasquatch. And I'm sure part of it, some people who were working on nouns for years, this could be the perfect time to get those people who couldn't afford 20 ETH to get in. Like there's some really awesome pieces to that. But at the same time, like there's probably not 479 of those people that you want to give them away to. And if you do give them away to those people, they then have a vote in the DAO. And if there's enough of them, they can fork and then do another treasury grab.
Do it again.
And the main treasury just keeps going down, and it doesn't do what the goal of nouns was, to perpetuate nouns globally to be the number one brand. So it's a very interesting, like, Escher painting of how to get this done.
Yeah. And they can gift them, right, to people that they want to join the community and be, have leadership and creativity. So that, it's, what was it like? That's this person's very nounish, right? Like I remember that.
Most of the people are already in the community. Like I think even Bob Burnquist, who professional skateboarder, he was already knowledgeable of nouns and crypto. Like it's not like they just said, "Hey Bob, we got a skateboard head for you." Like he was already, he's a very smart, nice, savvy guy. Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to bring it up because like I said, like DAOs to me, because remember, it's not like one person decides. I mean, the Nounders, the founder guys, like 6 or 7 of them or 5 of them, however many there are, they have those 90 that they get. Every 10th noun goes to them. So their voting power, now that so many people have left, is way more powerful. So they kind of, let's assume if they all vote with those Nounders, they can kind of push through things they want. But it's kind of a reset button, and it's a fresh start, and it's cool, and I want to be a part of it. But I'm also like, I want to get in at the price that is right, like, which feels to me like the curling club had. I was willing to pay 10 ETH, which even that I was like, that, like, if everything unwound, that feels a little high to me. But at the end of the day, I kind of wanted that curling club head because my dad curled. So,
well. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess the interesting point is that it's staying at this 20, and you had your number in your head, and it ended up going for double. So it's interesting that's going on. And anyone who wants to reference, we have a whole show where we had a great conversation with Brennan, and kind of also looked at how innovative the DAO structure that they've come up with. And I didn't know that kind of spun off into Farcaster as well. So that's interesting to kind of look at it through that perspective. Just a quick other follow-up from another show. We did, our first show was on Azuki, and we really kind of, went back and forth and just analyzing what the state of the community is and what their moves are going forward. And, it was interesting just to know that in the past week or so, they had a party similar to the one that brought Chicago and I together in Vegas, but they did it in Hong Kong. And I think it was concurrent with Yuga, with the Bored Ape parties, the Ape Fest as well. So first of all, it's kind of interesting that it's all kind of timed at the same time in Hong Kong, which could be something to look into as well. But I remember you saying that you had a conversation with a woman at the New York event at the LA event you went to, because you didn't go to New York for Azuki.
Right.
And
The first one.
And you were and she was like a brand person, or like worked with, I don't know if it was PR or something like that.
Right.
And she was kind of down on the execution and kind of said, I don't know if this event is on par with what people would expect from like a super high end brand execution. Is
She
that
didn't
right?
say, I don't know. No, she didn't say, I don't know if it's on par. She said, these are not even remotely on par if you're going for the premium brand experience. And my point back to her was like, look, this is a new medium. These guys, like nobody here is coming from the premium brand experience. Even the collectors, maybe some more are coming in now from the traditional art and kind of the upper echelons of at least monetary society, right? Who have a lot of money to throw around. But she was just kind of ripping on it. Like, you had those people waiting in line, and you and I in Vegas had to wait in line, and we bailed on it to get just the tchotchkes, or the whatever you call them.
Swag bag.
Yeah, the swag bag from the show. And then we came back the next morning. The internet still wasn't working. It was just like pretty poorly executed. Like I got to say, the hoodie, even though the aglet ring broke, it's a comfy hoodie, and it's a heavy. I love those heavy, thick quality hoodies. It's a good hoodie, but they've got, if for PFPs and for these we'll call them these exclusive clubs, if royalties have gone away, obviously one thing they can do to keep the fire burning is these parties all over the world. And they've done New York, they've done Vegas, they did LA, and they actually did, I believe, the skateboard one Azuki did, at least in Hong Kong. That's obviously the one of the places you have to go. It's a hub, that New York, of pretty much everything, right? East and West. Yeah. And it's an important piece of it, but if you're going to be that premium experience, I think over time you have to do better than you are now.
Yeah, and that was kind of the takeaway, and the reason I'm even bringing it up from the past show was we even talked about at the top of the show, the Ape Fest. And if people are justifying holding or justifying their purchase of something, and a big part of it is access to an event, you don't want to have people leaving blind. You don't, it's call me crazy, but like, that's not the user experience. But I was also reading some threads of people saying that, it was super long lines to get the merch. So I don't understand, like, if you're going to have to rely more
Azuki
or
or Bored Ape, I didn't hear that
at the Ape Fest.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, it's deja vu. Like, we were just dealing with that. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's for what it's worth. Like, if you're going to rely on that sort of stuff, it's going to be more and more important to your, survival and your success moving forward. I would recommend fine tuning it a heck of a lot more.
Well, and it makes me feel better about maybe, I still hold an Azuki. I hold my favorite one with the Air Jordan shoes around his neck.
Did you get that on reveal, or did you get it after?
I got it after, because I wanted, okay. I was going to buy one a couple days before reveal, and I would have saved a couple ETH, but then I would have gotten, who knows, maybe I would have gotten a Spirit and Totally Lucky. But I was like, I've already done NFTs and other collections. Like, I want to get the one that I want. So I went about an ETH above floor, which was 3 or 4 at the time. I think it was, the floor was 3, and I got the 2 that I got on reveal day for 4, and both of them, like I said, I wanted to tell a story with them. The one with the Air Jordan shoes, reminded me of me in my skateboarding days. So that's the one I really wanted. And, I don't regret it. And that's one that, I will probably hold for a long time. But yeah, and it just makes me realize, like, if the royalties go away and the play is these big parties to get everyone together, that's awesome because those parties are fun, but the execution over time as the people get more sophisticated, it's gotta be better than that, or otherwise, like, why are we giving them so much money to throw mediocre parties with like okay DJs? Like something's not adding up there.
Yeah. So one of the things that's been great about doing the show for however many weeks we've done it is seeing how these themes kind of come back together and kind of interlace. And, we're going to create our own kind of world within this ecosystem that'll build upon itself. And we've kind of seen that a little bit from like the decisions on how to approach different collections and investments. And that's kind of the journey that we just want to share with everybody who tunes in. So,
for sure.
I wanted to end the show with something good. I don't have, I would like to work hugs into it, but I didn't, you came up with that. And I thought that was a great way to start. And I don't have like a singular, oh, this moment happened to me this week or this happened to me. And I think that what I'm really, gratified by is I'm just so happy to be able to go through this experience and to be able to find something that taps and satisfies so much of what I guess would be almost latent creativity or imagination, and to be able to be part of, the exploration of this evolving space and to find things that just trigger, joy and wonder. And that, when you come across something new, like even the chaos roads, or learning, oh, this is how kind of that works behind the rocket pool side of it. I guess my something good is it feels good to embrace the rabbit holes that come about this journey. And, I'm not getting it from, standard media, or I'm not getting it from anywhere else. It's like the only place I can really get my fix is, digging into this developing space. And I think that sometimes it's easy to kind of look at the toxic parts of it or this or that. But if you just take a step back, like, I really feel like my life's a heck of a lot more entertaining and enriching, and gives me a lot of excitement for the days ahead. So that's kind of my something good for this week. And I really appreciate kind of going through this journey with you, Chicago, and with our audience. And,
likewise.
And we always just want to be authentic to this path and journey. So that's what I hope we accomplished again this week.
Yeah, well said. And I don't think I could any more eloquently add to that. So, take care, everybody. Enjoy the show. If you have any ideas for things and rabbit holes to go down, please let us know. Hit that subscribe button, and just join us on this journey. And let's go into this next bull or fake bull or whatever we're calling this thing. Let's all do it together, honestly and truthfully, where we have each other's backs.
Amen. I hear you. And once again, this show's for entertainment purposes only. Nothing is financial advice. We encourage you to do your own research and not to get over your skis and invest more than you can afford to lose. But thanks for your time, and we'll see you again next week.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.